All right. Welcome back to Girl in the Middle. I'm your host, Mariah Krystal. I'm here today with Lauren L.C. Wells, the founder of HerVival. HerVival is a transformative, holistic wellness and personal development company dedicated to disrupting traditional work environments and empowering women to prioritize their well being. Lauren has over 20 years of experience in wellness, healthcare, and social services, and she's helped hundreds of women reconnect with their health, mindset, and balance. But before all of that, she was navigating her own journey, making pivots and figuring out what success looked like on her own terms. Today, we're going to cover how she transitioned from social services and healthcare to launching her own company, the women she works with, and why wellness is a career strategy, not just self care, and how perfectionism and procrastination hold us back from making the changes we need. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mariah. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited to have you. So, a little background, I met Lauren, what was that, a couple weeks, maybe months now, right?
A couple months ago. Well, I first saw you at System Sales, but we officially met a couple months ago. Yeah, at my event.
Yes, so she had an event with two other coaches, and it was called the Success Code. And Lauren, just learning about her company and what she focuses on, and I was like, oh, this is what I'm struggling with, like every part of it. And so I was like, I gotta have her on so we can explore a little bit more about what she does and how she's helping people to become their best selves. So, Lauren, I want to start back a little bit. If you can explain just like a quick background of your journey, right? So, what were you doing in your roles prior to starting your company? And then what led you to that transition?
Yeah, as I look back, 20 years plus, I realized I was creating a quilt of my journey. Um, I was always in some form, I guess I was always a healer. I was always in some form of helping people just feel well, be well. I started out in nursing. I went to a vocational high school, so I started in nursing. But I just was like, I don't want to change diapers. So even though I ended up changing diapers, working in social services. But I graduated college. Shout out to the HBCU. I went to Maryland Eastern Shore, and I graduated in the rehabilitation services. So I started working in Harlem. That's where I'm from. I started working at an organization where I was working with adults who had mental disabilities. So it was a little bit of a shifted change. Like I said, I still end up changing diapers. But not like in a bed setting. My eyes just started opening up a little bit more. But I actually came out of school right when the market crashed in 2008. So, the jobs was scarce, the benefits was gone. The pay was terrible, despite following the path that we were told to go to college, do well, graduated magna cum laude, all that stuff. And then I was like, I barely can't get afforded a studio apartment. You know what I mean? Like my mom moved back to a one bedroom. I'm in a one bedroom apartment, sleeping on my mother's couch. And I was just like, I can't afford to even get up off of here. Like what is happening? So I feel like I went through like an early quarter life crisis, because I was just like, what is going on? This is not the plan. Like, I thought I am working in my field, and I barely am making money. Like I can't figure this out. So I kind of like, when you're going through a life crisis, you freak out, right? So I was just looking for any way possible. I was like, I need my student loans paid. I need a lot of things. So I ended up enlisting into the Navy, child. And I enrolled, but like I said, my journey is a quilt, right? So there's new needles, new threads, new patterns coming in, but they all now here today, I see why they all weave together. But as I was getting into fitness, I was never into fitness. People thought I was, but I wasn't. I always knew the body, so when I did become a trainer down the road, it was easy to gel together. Like, you know what I mean? But I ended up getting into the military to get my student loans covered. I mean, I was just like, I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have nothing out here. I'm going to just go. And I guess God had another plan. You talk about pivots in the middle. literally in the middle of, as I was about to get ready to report for basic training, I had an injury a couple days before I accidentally spilled some boiling water on my leg when I was cooking. The pot fell. So I couldn't go. Like literally, I reported in Brooklyn and they were like, you can't go like that. It's an open wound. Come back in 2 weeks and let's see. But in that time, like I said, we had the 2008 market crash, but jobs was slowly coming back and someone was able to take my job. So now I'm back working in social services because the military didn't work out. I wasn't going to get this. I was the last of that batch that was getting student loan repayment. And I literally went back to working for a different organization, still not making money like that, working with the adults who have mental disabilities. So I still kind of had another second win of a midlife crisis, like what is happening, what is going on. But I'm thankful for the path that the Navy did because I never would have gotten to fitness or working out. Like in that interim of time, people were going to the gym with me to help me pass because, child, I couldn't run for nothing. Like I needed some training, but because I knew the body, like apparently my friends would say, "Oh, that's my trainer." Like, it just clicked. So, through that time, as I'm like, this path of what I was told to go to college and work, this path is not it, and I'm not going back to college. Like, I'm not going back to get more student loans or anything like that. And then it took some years, like maybe about 3 years later, I finally realized what I was always doing and what people were calling me for as their trainer. I ended up going and getting my certification at CUNY to become a certified fitness trainer. So then that's how that path. And then when I got into that realm, everything shifted for me because I only known Western philosophy and preventative care, right? And then when I got into fitness training and meeting and learning a lot about people, I started getting into some aspects, but unfortunately, because I was hustling, bustling, and moving around the city so much, I would wake up at 5 o'clock. I got to be at the gym at before 6 a.m. I wouldn't get home till 11 o'clock. My own personal health struggles from burnout. And I didn't know what prioritizing wellness was like. I thought because I'm working out, I am in wellness. A lot of things changed for me. I started having a lot of gut health issues, hormonal imbalances. I had thyroid problems, and my span started to shift a lot. I was like, okay, I'm learning things being in this sphere of people. Meeting people who literally live the life of taking care of themselves. Some of us was burning ourselves out. It's definitely many layers and different paths of people who are in the health and fitness realm. So you have some fitness who are literally burning themselves out and look good. Like I look good. It's like, child, you couldn't tell me nothing. Like I just knew something. But then I was like, what has happened to me? I'm having pain. I'm standing up and I can't feel my toes while I'm training this client. Like what's happening? So then I started going down the rabbit hole of cleansing, detoxing, and learning a lot of different things. So I would say I've always been within the health wellness in some way, but my own personal struggles, as well as losing and seeing my own family, having health struggles. I lost my god brother at 36 years old, and I was just like, what is this? Like, what's happening? What are we against? So, why are so many of our family having health issues? I thought it was just not working out and eating well. You know what I mean? But then I started having my challenges when, my first bout, now that I can say it now, I didn't understand then, but my first bout of burnout and gut health problems that end up, when I started really paying attention to those two, I was able to heal myself. And actually it helped me to grow career wise. Like I had bigger capacity, to show up. So I'll stop there. But that was like my quilt that started to pan out to my journey.
No, I love that. And if you hear me quiet, it's because I'm like on the mm-hmm. And producer Steven hates that. I'll be like, oh my God, talking over you. So no, but there's so much there. I love that you said a quilt because as you think about it, most people don't think about their journey in that way until there's, I mean, to your point, like even like hindsight, but if you start thinking about it earlier, like going back to say these things prepared me. So no, you didn't make it into the Navy because like life had a different plan for you, but you were able to learn something new. And so that journey was not, for nothing, right? Like
Yep.
that was a really big shift. You then have the nursing, the healthcare, the social services background, and learning, like you said, learning people, learning medicine, learning the body. And then you had the opportunity to heal yourself, which I think is so important because a lot of times people will be really great at helping others, but they haven't been able to turn said thing on themselves. And
Mhm.
once you conquer yourself, that's a whole other space, right? So I think that that's super important. You've got a lot, there's like a lot to touch there. I think that, I think that one of the things that I want to touch on is really going from, you've got a lot of, excuse me, take a step back. Your work centers around women and and people prioritizing their well-being, right? What are you seeing happening with people, women in high stress careers who don't take care of themselves? You mentioned burnout, but what does that actually look like?
Yeah, because like I said, I was burned out for years and didn't even know.
Mhm.
I'm just showing up to what I'm supposed to do, and because I'm doing great work and impact, and I found what I loved, I didn't think, but my body is saying otherwise. So I would say those are the things. Like, if you are having headaches, you're fatigued, you're having digestive problems, uh, I'm trying to think some of mine, literally out of nowhere having like skin issues, eczema, body acne, your body starts tapping at the door before, even if you don't answer it, to say what's happening. Also to some of the things when it comes to, like, for me, the gut health issues. As I look back, I was like, when I actually like became a certified digestive health coach and really, really got into the work, I was like, man, like I was having issues for years and not realizing, from the bloating, certain foods that just, even if it was healthy, like broccoli, like certain things wasn't working out for me, or I felt like I didn't understand like food combinations, so many things. And those are, in most cases, because most of the women I work with have like big, high roles, and a lot of them enjoy their work. Like, they work to where they are, they love what they do, such as where I was, because I always say I was my first client. Like, when I really started to get into this work, I really was my first client. So I would say those are some of the signs. And then if it does get to the point where your day-to-day life doesn't feel fulfilling anymore.
Ooh, I think that's a big one.
Yeah, because I found where some of the women, and it could be the job, the boss, like, those stuff are valid, but I've definitely have women who love what they do. They get paid very well, and just even things outside of maybe their work, their own personal life, their fulfillment. They stop showing up for our sessions, like all of those things where you start not feeling fulfilled because you're so burnt out, is something to literally start bringing into the light of what's happening. So I always say, when it comes to prioritizing, yes, I talk about prioritizing our wellness, but prioritizing our well-being, like overall, we strive for optimal well-being, right? And I feel like for me, I can't speak it if I never lived it. So, I feel like I can talk this talk and walk this walk, because I walk the walk. I fall, I stumble, and I get back up and I do it again, because life is cycles.
Mhm.
And it's really, really important when certain parts of your life does not feel fulfilled. That's when it needs to see. Because literally, when you really prioritize your own well-being, your own mental well-being, like those things, other stuff starts to literally come together like a full circle.
Yes.
And if you do that, then you just find stuff starts to work out. Like, I'm not going to go too, I mean, we can, but if you understand, when it comes to like mindset, spirituality, and manifesting and bringing in all these things, everything works in divine order, and it starts with you. So that's why I call myself like a disruptor, whether it's in the work environments, whether it's, with entrepreneur women, is to really start thinking, in what ways are you fully showing up? Is your cup full? And if it's not, how can we fill that up first so we could pour into everything else?
Yeah. I love that you touched on so many different things because like everything coming into divine order, or if you even want to say like a divine intervention, being able to be at optimal well-being so that you can hear. I talked about this on another episode. We talked about breaking free from complacency, and a lot of what needs to happen is for you to be able to hear yourself, and then internally for you to be able to hear God or whatever, for those other, whatever you believe in, whatever that higher power is, for you to be able to hear what the next steps are, or to like start to see things. If you're
Mhm.
in, I mean, not this role, but like 2 roles ago, I was in meetings from 9 to 5. 9 to 5. I remember like specifically like how this connects. I remember we had an admin, bless her heart, she's the sweetest thing ever. But I literally have one break, and it was at like 1 to 1:15. And she says to me, "Hey, I know you're helping out with the hiring for this other team. I've got a phone screening for you. Looks like you're free from 1 to 1:15." And like I remember being, and I apologized later, but I remember being so angry because I was like, when do I pee? When do I like when do I breathe? When do I eat?
Yeah.
Like why would you cuz she has full. I was like, you see my entire calendar. Why would you think that that would be a time? And I remember being like, I'm sorry. But it was more so I was just so overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And like to your point, like headaches, I had so many more migraines. And then just feeling like, yeah, I'm doing good work, but I also always felt like I couldn't keep up because I'm like, okay, well, I went from a personnel issue with one employee to like, oh, I'm promoting the next one, to like, okay, I'm in a strategy session, to now I'm like reprimanding somebody. Now I'm coaching someone. Now I'm dealing with a client. Oh, okay, I got 10 minutes to like eat, use the bathroom. I'm back in another meeting. And then like any strategy or like, hey, what's the reports? What's going on? I'm like, I can't get it together. And me just thinking like, oh, I just need to do more, do more. When the reality
Mhm.
is, I need to do less.
Yes. They say less is more. And literally, your story and what you're hearing is literally was like all of my clients until you do have to advocate for yourself. You do have to reevaluate certain jobs. I've had, clients and women within my community that dreamed the role that they got, right? Working for some amazing companies, beautiful pay, all that stuff. And then I see them decline, and if I'm seeing them decline from a client to, coach relationship, of course, it's in their families, it's in their marriage, they're a significant partner. Like the true things that matter most to them, why they strive for the job and the role, so they say,
Mhm.
it suffers, and the biggest part where it suffers the most is yourself. So as much as the cliche saying says, when a plane is going down, put your oxygen mask on first. Like, how? I'm in another meeting in the back. I can't even get to my seat to put the oxygen mask on. You know what I mean? So that's when it's like, when you do that, and then like I said, your body is keeping record of everything. There's a book I reference all the time called The Body Keeps the Score, by Bessel van der Kolk. And I see these women all the time, and then later they just crying out of nowhere, feeling overwhelmed, like your nervous system is shot. So everything what you're saying, I'm just hearing that nervous system like tick, 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 and like the drop in the bucket, and then it just starts to overflow. And then, stuff like who your true character is not showing anymore. You're stressed out, you're yelling, you're frustrated, and then people lose their sense of identity throughout that times too. So yeah, burnout and stress is a major, those are burnout, the unconscious, because you're doing your work and your impact is the unconscious, I like to say like the secret contributors to burnout, stress, and overwhelm. And then it impacts your focus, your productivity, and leadership. So that's why I say prioritizing your well-being is the strategy. You want to be more productive, you want to be more focused, you want to, have more peace. Everybody wants peace, right? We always say, oh, this is chaotic. I want peace. But in order, if you even look up the definition of peace, like in order to have peace, you got to have structure, you got to have order, you have to have rest. You know what I mean? So, those are the things that I talk about. I share. You saw when you came to, my event, my segment of thinking about these things that we don't put the time towards a lot, and being the disruptor to bring it to the forefront again, because we need to hear it again until it becomes the habit and it becomes a way of how we operate in our life. And even for me, I know this, and then there's times where I get caught up on the, how did I get on this hamster wheel? I'm not doing this. Like, you know what I mean? And I have to like anytime you want to change some form of habits, you have to have a sense of disruptor. And that is where the constant conversation is important. Then you can be able to, disrupt the thoughts that gets caught into that, be able to have the focus, and, be able to have that productivity. And leaders, like I said, a lot of the women in the spaces I work with is either people are building, big missions, whether they're a leader for an organization or their own. And like I said, I live the life, and this is something that I have walked by, and I see that works, and there's a lot of science back behind it. This is the path that you have to do to actually have sustainable well-being. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can be productive in other ways. So yeah, you can rest, and if you go ahead and rest, and I'm not talking about a nap. People think rest is always like, I'm gonna go take a nap, because you are tired. But rest is just going for a walk and taking off your mind. You know what I mean? Like, especially work from home. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times you think you work from home, like, all right, I'll go on that meeting, because you're not walking or going out or driving somewhere. And that's not rest. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's where we have to have time. Like, where are you resting? Like, where you just said, when can I pee?
Yeah.
Like, a rest is pee. When I can breathe. When I
Mm-hmm.
can go for a walk. So yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah, you touched on a couple things. I want to make sure I bring back a couple points. So one of the things you talked about is structure, and I think that a lot of us don't have structure. We have forced structure where, for instance, like that schedule of mine, right? Like I knew I had certain recurring meetings, or I knew I had responsibilities that I would have to input into my schedule, and therefore, you know, I would have that structure. But I never built a structure. Well, before I wasn't building a structure for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spending time with myself. And so, the other part that you mentioned is disruptor, or some kind of disruption. You can't have a disruption if there is no structure, because if you are every day flying by the seat of your pants, or just like every day you're just doing what's in front of you, to stop yourself doesn't feel like a disruption. It's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it feels like slowing down. It feels like, oh, I'm not working at my capacity. I'm not being busy. I should be able to handle this. When in reality, you don't have something to say, okay, this is what optimal looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have that, that's an issue. We talked about resting, right? People like, oh, I'm going to take a nap, or I'm going to take a walk, which I think is really important. Walking is super helpful, but I think it's also like, how do you quiet the internal, right? Like, how do you quiet your brain? For those who are like high achievers, are always on go, I oftentimes wake up and like my mind is like, okay, you got to email Lauren, you got to talk to Stephen, you have to do these 10, 15 things, and I'm literally just waking up and my brain's like, here's the day, and my
Mm-hmm.
body is like, oh my God, just whoa. And a lot of times, people are so used to operating in that, not to say that it's comfortable, but it's repetition. And
Yeah.
when you pull them out of that, they feel like they're being unproductive.
Ooh. Yeah, you just hit a big thing. But I want to go back to something that you just said. I don't think
Mhm.
you realized you said that, because you put a little bit more emphasis of what rest really is, and you talked about your brain, right?
Mhm.
Rest is rewiring your brain.
Mm. Mm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's because at the end of the day, what you have to move and operate is, your brain, your nervous system, the body feels the effect of that. Like, in order, when it comes to like being optimally well, it's, this is why I always talk about mind, body, and spirit, right? So, and where I talk a lot about like your brain health, your gut health, like these are things to really look at because they're like your circuit breakers. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, if people start looking at rest in a sense to your brain instead of the physical body for sleep, and you need sleep, don't get me wrong. When you start understanding and learning about like I love Joe Dispenza. I'm like a geek at his stuff. If anybody never checked him out, check out Joe Dispenza. But I love a lot of things that he speaks and talk about. And then there's another guy, Jim Quick. He likes to talk about as far as like optimizing your brain and how you could do things faster but more productive so you're not burning yourself out. So like you're just learning better strategies, organization, structure, some
Mhm.
order and making that more impactful, right? So I think it's really, really important that you look at those aspects and then reframe the challenge of
Mhm.
what's coming up. So I digress there, but when you said that, I was just like, that's the rest if we start looking at it that way. Like, how can we be able to slow down our mind so we can understand what's happening, brain dump where it's needed, and then compartmentalize and then move accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I've recently learned when I because when my mind is going like that, my body act reacts and is very visceral. Like I feel like the pins and needles, or I just have this restless energy. And it used to be like I can't calm down. It would take me hours to just like really settle. Right, I might be able to go throughout my day, but I'm on edge, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm okay, but I'm on edge. I'm like, "Oh god, how am I gonna, relax?" And
Breath,
recently.
baby, breath. That's where that part comes in.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Breathing has definitely helped, especially like in times where I've had like panic attacks and things like that, like getting on the floor, grounding myself, calling out, like doing grounding techniques and methods. But what I've really tried to lean into is like, how do I calm myself before I even get there? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do I, and I'm learning now. I posted about this a couple of weeks ago about like learning how to operate in your when you have how I want to take a step back. I talked about learning how to operate when you have high energy and like how to maximize that, right? So the days that I'm like, I can conquer the world. I'm gonna set my intentions. I'm gonna do as much as I can, feel really good about it. But on the days where I have really low energy and I'm beat, I'm tired, this is the only thing you're gonna get out of me today.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna rest. And my rest, if I can't sleep, a audiobook and a word search.
Mm-hmm.
And my brain can't focus on anything else. It's like, where's these words and what's the story? And like that has become like a savior to me, just like occupying my brain so that it's not running 10,000 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. You put your attention to a thing and stay there, you know what I mean? And not attention to the thing that is all of the tasks and the work that you got to do. So like having that time of rest. I love word puzzles too. My husband says I'm like an old granny because I just be over there just like look. I love the word searches or certain things like that because it helps to calm me. You know what I mean?
oh,
So and also too, I think I want to add that self discovery is a big thing because that might not work for someone. Also, too, learning how to work in different times, like seasons and cycles. If we understand cycle syncing in our body hormonally, right? There's times where like when you're ovulating, you have more, and that's when you're probably like, I'm pretty sure if you do some cycle syncing, that time when you feel like you want to conquer the world, you got everything done. So you're probably just coming out of your menstrual cycle,
yes,
you
yep,
know?
you're right.
So if we understand that, then we can start planning around that. So I know when it's time for me to do a lot of like planning and I got to look at like super tedious things, I do my best. Not all the time it works like that, but I do my best to put that when I'm in that like cycle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have your follicle. Like I'm not a genius at that part. I have to always like look down to reference because I use an app called Moody app and they change it. So they call the shift, they call it the reflection. So they call it something different. And I think for me, because there's many times I'm even on panels for like hormones and stuff, and I blame the moody app. Sometimes I'm like, gosh, you guys, I got to go back to think the actual term because
Right.
I was like, y'all made it trendy and catchy, and I was like, I'm on a panel where I need to share that. So like, yeah, the shift and the reflection, like I look at those type of cycles where I'm at, and plan my life around that a little bit. Especially when, because there's times where I'd be on the go and I'm fine and I work really well, and I know like I said, I know my season, which is summer. For me, where I don't have to be that tedious on my schedule. I run pretty well, but I know when my fuel is getting low, I go back to that and look at and put the plan. So then I'm not, basically burning the candle on both ends. So that's why I say it is important to take yourself on. Like, what I mean? Like, yes, I'm working with clients, but I still take myself on, because this path, when it shows in ways that we want to show, what ways we have our own goals, but even in whatever higher powers that be that you believe in, the path that you're required to, right? Because I don't know about y'all, but me and God be tussling with my roles of what he want me to do. And I'm like, you want me to do that? Like, so there's times where I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to work this through. So like I said, it is a sense of have fun and joy when it comes to the self-discovery, and learning what you want and what
But
works for you.
I want to get into for those who have not yet tapped into self-discovery, how do you get started with that? What are some things you suggest? What are some tips you would give them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say the best thing is because, I don't mean to get too spiritual and biblical in here, but, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we always hear everything we need is within us. Right. So that's where it's important to take that time to sit still. And when I do have anybody who's like, I don't know, and I notice a lot of high level women, we just don't have time to sit down. Most of the time where I find, like, if it's like, I don't know and do and stuff like that, I find myself tussling with family a little bit more, trying to get
Yeah.
them to
We don't know how
pause
to
a bit.
aid
But
the
this is
time.
why when you do find yourself because I can't give that for you, right? The best thing I would say is what's pulling and tugging you the most. But if you don't take time to sit still and just kind of get a feel of what that pull is, you got to start with sitting still. That's why I share breath work so much. Because the more we sit still to breathe and calm the chatter, our nervous system, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, and everything that just occupies and spins around our brain, like, what is it? Oh, like over 90% of our thoughts are repetitive, right? So
Yeah.
if that's just occupying all day, you know what I mean? So but at the end of the day, when I started doing my studies in breath work, when you actually pause and just hold your breath, your brain stops. Like, all those thoughts kind of stop. So when you actually start to learn rhythmic ways of using your breath, you can slow the thoughts down and then ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? What's pulling me? So I think it's important to ask yourself that. And if you don't, start practicing ways to, calm yourself and breathe, and then ask yourself, what's pulling me the most? And some people may have different things of, like, what, journaling has been on my mind, or going to the gym, like, physical activity. For me, that was my start of this self-discovery, healing, wellness journey, was physical exercise. Like, even when I had everything, go into flames, when I knew I wasn't going to the military, and I quit my job. Like, I had nothing. I quit the job. With the military, always had long hair. You got to cut your hair. I cut my hair. I gave away everything. I had no clothes. I had a little drawstring bag with 6 white panties and 6 socks and a little Bible and a phone book. That's all I had. And then some Uggs, because I didn't want to give it away. I told my mom, put it in the thing. When I graduate, bring me my Uggs, because I just bought them. I didn't have anything, right? And I say all that to say is, there's times that if we just pause and look what's in front of us, and what things are happening. There's times that a calling is happening upon you. And if you don't slow down, things will knock you down for you to realize it. And I've gotten knocked down quite a few times because I wouldn't take that time to pause. But our journey is supposed to be our journey. So I say, whether you are attentive to it or not, your self-discovery is happening right before you. If you just sit down and open your eyes and look and even ask the questions, then you could be on the path with it.
I I love that. I love that for so many reasons. Um, I think, to your point, everybody's journey is unique, and what's going to happen to them or how it's going to show up and what it's going to take to get them there. Like you said, like working out is one thing for me. I realize that I'm less anxious when I work out. Like after I've worked out, I think our last call, I told you, I was like, I went to the gym like right before our call, and I was just like, I can't move, I can't get anything done. That it just like it calms me.
Mm-hmm.
But you also mentioned about identity and people like not like having an understanding of their true identity and sometimes like almost taking on whatever's like put in front of them. So
Mm-hmm.
there's this book that I'm reading, and I'm gonna have to add it later because I don't remember what it's called right now. But it's a book that Will Smith talked about. He read, and it's for acting actually. But the premise behind the story is really interesting. So they talk about like what's your identity statement,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about how your identity is essentially everything that you are taught, the things that surround you, who you become by nature of your work and your family, all of those things. And you get to a point where, for example, before all of this, I like the last job I worked, I was making a lot of money. Like I'm head of whatever, director of insert thing. And I'm like, I'm not taking less than this. I am like, here's what I do, here's what I won't do. And like there's certain things about me where it's just like this is like who I am, this is how I'm gonna operate. And in the book they talk about
Are you talking
usually
about The Alchemist?
no, but
Oh.
I think that it's related. It's I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna put it in here later. I promise. But they basically they're talking about the setup of movies. They say every movie has the same kind of setup. The movie has the identity, like the identity. They show you who the character is, right, as they show, and then they show you like an opportunity of what life would look like if the character lived in the true essence of themselves instead of what the world and family and everything has pushed them to be. And then there comes a situation in life that forces them to take a look at their identity versus the essence of who they truly are, right? And then they talk about the way you discover that is like, what are you longing for? Something in the back of your mind is coming up, whether it's super clear or not, but something keeps knocking at you to like basically say, hey, you might be interested in this, or you're supposed to be doing this, God's calling, whatever you want to call it, like there's something. And in order for you to pursue that, your identity must die.
Mm-hmm.
So if I put that into terms of like my life, if you asked me last year before I got laid off, so let's say like what is this 25? So 2023, early 24 back into 2023 and then before then, um if you asked me like what would I truly want to do? And I would always say like I want to build a community. I want to show people that there's more to life than just one path. I want to, enter all of these things, the things that I'm doing now. And I know that if I really pursue this, it's gonna be a thing. But then I would cry every time you asked me. I don't care who it was. If you asked me like, Mariah, what did you really want to be in life? I would like burst out into tears. And I remember being in a coaching session and a therapy session, two separate sessions, and they're like, what is this thing that you're fighting with? And I was just like, um, I am afraid of the responsibility that comes
Mm-hmm.
with what I want to do. I'm afraid of the responsibility of owning,
Yeah.
possibly being able to help people change their lives. But then I'm also like, I'm just afraid of stepping into a part of me where I would fully control it. Whereas, like with work, I'm gonna kill it because I like this paycheck. Like I like this paycheck. I feel like someone is depending on me, and so I want to show up in this way. When you operate for yourself, when you work for yourself, whether that's an entrepreneurial aspect or you're working to understand who you truly are, you have to have a different driver.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have to build confidence. And like we talked about in the session that I seen you at, like confidence is repetition of doing. And so I was just like, no, I'm scared. And I'm scared of who I could become. And in a positive way. I'm scared of like I'm honestly scared of the success that comes with me being my best self.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time I would burst into tears.
Yeah, I remember having that. I remember the first time I signed up with the first business opportunity, and I remember calling my best friend, and I was like all anxious, couldn't even get my words out. And she was like, "Well, what are you so afraid of?" Like, she knows I'm not really a big thing of like fail. I feel like that's just like too much weight to worry about if it fails. Like, I'm even looking at your sign back there, like, what if it all works out? And for me, I'm like, yeah, like, what if it does work out? That's like a lot. I don't think I want that much. Like, what do you mean?
No.
And I remember I was like, I didn't realize until that moment. I will never forget. I was in like Grand Central Station. There was a hotel right there, the Hyatt. I remember I was like, I think I was on the 11th floor, and I remember sitting there at the elevator. I think I was about to leave or something, and it hit me in that moment that I had the fear of success. And I
Hello.
was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, you know what I mean? And I was just like, because whenever that happens to us, it's like, congratulations, you graduated to a new level because you're thinking bigger,
Yeah.
right? So once you get to the point of that, be okay and just know. And I anchor myself all the time. Even like I said, I've had many times of quote unquote failure. I don't even look at failure because those are just data for me. And helping me to learn. I think the business owner and me, we love when stuff just don't really work out. We keep records, we got data, and we know what to do better. So at this point, failure is like, great. The more I get the failure, the more I can work on it and the more I can get to where I'm trying to go, right? Because if failure is just a response, to come back for me to know. But I've had that for so long. I'm like, I don't even know how things are going to go if it does work out. Like, to the biggest part where this responsibility, where I feel that calling, where God's calling me towards, is like, what? And it's because we have to step into the greater parts of being. So you said something about confidence is the repetition of doing, right? But really stepping into owning, ownership is stepping into that being. The being greater than what you see. Because a lot of times, like I remember, I can't remember, it was a book that I read and talked, like the first time I started having a concept around being. If that's why you have to disrupt the negative thoughts and reframe, the way you see yourself, because I didn't know, like, for me to be on here talking, child, I had a whole stutter issue. You know what I mean? For me to feel confident to come out, I didn't feel like I had that much value, to come out and all of those things. So my way of being back then never even seen this. So sometimes we don't even know or see the path. But anytime you feel that calling, that pulling, right? You have to know that it's something far greater than where you are, and you're not going to be led to anything. And that's why affirmations is so important. You know what I mean? Where I really feel like to be fully successful and fully step into like the bigger parts of your being, you almost got to be like delusional. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You almost kind of be delusional for the temporary state for yours, because our psyche always wants to make sense of something, and sometimes when it comes to to manifesting in a bigger level, it doesn't always make logic sense, right? And if you are a spiritual person and believe in a bigger thing, wherever you want to call it, there's no logic to that. It just is, right? So when you see people have miracles or stuff just kind of came out of nowhere, there's no logic to that. Our brain is always trying to work to make sense of something. So sometimes that's where like the affirmations and stepping and saying what it is, you got to get caught into that. If you want to say, maybe everybody won't relate to that as far as delusional, but for me, because I'm such a logic person at times and I'm like, make it make sense, I'm like, oh, okay, I just got to be delusional for the moment until I really step into the being that this is what it is and this is my reality. I'm actually living into a delusion. Like, it was years for me. I never thought I was going to get off my mom's couch. You know what I mean? When we first started this podcast, I'm in my own home that we own. You know what I mean? And I just couldn't see how that would have been possible.
I,
So,
I think that's so important. I think people, my friend said this, my friend was like talking about somebody, she just said like, oh, their prices. And she was like, they're a little delusional. And like, your inclination is to kiki with your friend, but as I'm starting this business, my thought process has changed, and I was like, bro, I think you got to be a little delusional,
I
because
really believe that. I mean,
if somebody buys that thing for the price that's set, then now it's done. Like, now the hello,
mm-hmm.
new price, okay? So
Yesterday's price is not
not
today.
right. So when you step into that, and even like you said, like, um I knew at some point, I have my own, have my own home. Knew at some point I would have my own home. I'm married. I have a business. I used to always say, I used to start businesses all the time, like more so for like not fun, but more like hobby, maybe fun.
Mm-hmm.
And like, because at my core, I wanted to help people,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to give back and do things. For a very long time, for my birthdays, I would do community service on my birthday. I would do just like little things. But I also like spending money. So there's like, and the wanting to spend money and experience things, was like, yeah, I can help people and I'm gonna always help people, but I have to focus on like myself so that I can make more money. And making more money gave me more experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And having more experiences opened me up to different companies and different working styles, and different things where I can say, oh, okay, nobody's on my back or on my neck about completing something. So this is now my opportunity to work my, they used to say, work your desk as a business. Like, you are your own business. And when you operate like that, but you're still getting a paycheck, which is important. You're getting, regardless, you're like, you take full ownership over that. And so when you mess up, it's kind of like, yeah, you got somebody to talk to, but you know why you messed up, and like going back to that. So I say, I connect all these things to say that it is important to do some self work, and it is important to start thinking about, where do you thrive, right? I tell my clients, like, when you start thinking about what you want to do next, start thinking about what excites you. And if you take a step, like, let's say, take the last 5 or 10 years of your journey or your career, what is at the core? For me, it's been motivating, coaching, teaching people, and like helping people to see like the best sides of themselves. And any role I've ever had, whether it's clients or my actual, like, my employees, team members, whatever it is, being able to just naturally do that. People naturally confide in me, like all of these things. Okay. So that's at the core of that. Now, what does that look like as a business, or what does that look like as a hobby, right? Starting to take those things in. When you start looking at personal, what are some of the things, like you said, that relax you? And if you don't have time to sit with yourself to do those things, you'll never figure it out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it will never happen. So one of the things that I recommend to people is getting up earlier. No one likes to get up earlier, myself included. When I do it, I'm like, ugh. But when I get through it, I'm like, that was the best. It's 2 o'clock and everything's done. I worked out, I cooked, I did all this stuff. And it's like, damn, I got nothing to do. Like, so I say, get
So
up.
you can rest for real.
You can, but get up earlier and try to mark out time for yourself. So I
Mm-hmm.
try to spend, I'm not good at this every day, but for the most part, when I'm being optimal, I spend 3 hours with myself
Yep,
in
I'm
the
about the
morning,
same. Mm-hmm.
5 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like the first is just like, all right, girl,
It's getting up.
get up. I pray. I don't journal as well. I'm not good at journaling because I don't. I will do it when I'm full of an emotion, whatever it is, happy,
Mm.
sadness. I'll do it to like as a brain dump, but I'm not. I have not made time for it every day. So spending time with yourself, setting your intentions for today, like, hey, what's my energy level today? And if my energy level is low, that 3 hours with myself is gonna go down to one because I'm going back to sleep. That's right back to sleep. Like, okay, let's assess the day. But then the other thing is really starting to think about like what intentions, what do I intend to do today? And
Yeah.
really setting those things. And most people will say, like, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. And the reality is that we're not making the time because
Yeah, we have to make the time. That it is stuff does feel like it's a lot and it's not time. I want to go back to what you said, Mariah, with the journaling. For anybody who's listening and struggles with journaling, there's so many different ways and methods. Like you just spoke on a few things of like, what does this look like for me, or like these in-depth particular questions that could be your journaling. I have times where questions that racket my mind all the time of like, what does this look like for me, to start this business, or those are journaling. That's journaling, right?
hmm,
I at one point I had times where emotions feel very heavy and I'm pulling it out. That was journaling. There's times where I'm just brain dumping and getting a lot that's on my mind as a blank canvas to get it out. And then some stuff about how I feel, my identity with that will start unraveling from journaling. Another way of journaling was I would literally write down of the top 3 things I'm grateful for, 10 things I'm grateful for, and then I'll end my day of like what went well that gave me joy today. Like literally just taking that moment to put my time and concentration on something that will spark a sense of a dopamine hit and fulfillment, and oxytocin, where I felt some sense of joy for myself. So, there's so many different ways. So if anybody is listening to this and it's like, and then I'm speaking specifically, I don't know if this is prophetic coming in right now, but I'm speaking to someone specifically that has been feeling a pull of journaling and then open that journal and it's just nothing kind of coming out. Okay. So I was like, if that's what it is, frame it, like what am I grateful for in this moment, or just really write, I'm here, I don't know what to write, but I'm just here being present with myself. And then you just realize you start pushing that pen and, some stuff starts to come out. So I say all that to say for people who do get stuck and feeling that pull or inkling of journaling or whatever. And if that happens, maybe writing is not your style of journaling. It could be video. It could be voice note to yourself. So, this is why I say all of these things are self-discovery. This is what I talk about in our membership. Right now, we're doing our winter awakening, and it talks about all of this stuff with different things, because all of this stuff is self-care. Like your self-discovery is self-care. And the more that we do that, the more, it fuels clarity. It fuels, creativity and the resilience that you need in your personal and your professional life, where stuff starts to unpack and carve out, So, I just invite you to look at a very large way of different ways of journaling. And there's even there's different types of journals out there, like devotional journals. Like if you're someone who's very spiritual and reading a scripture really may spark something for you. There's different types of, I've seen enjoyment journals that will ask you certain prompt questions, or something like that. Maybe God's dropping on my spirit. I need to make a journal myself, and I'll receive that for that moment.
hello,
Keep
that's
it up
what
in
it
my
is.
heart. But there's different types of journaling, but journaling can be hard when we don't take that moment of pausing, because if journaling is hard at that moment, it's just because there's a lot kind of still going on up here, and then that anxious feeling of just sitting still with the journal and paper. But ask yourself, is it a matter of like, does something need to be framed for it to trigger for you to write, or maybe the style of expressing what's within needs to be looked at a different way?
Yeah.
So that could be like the video, the vlog, or something like that.
Yeah, no, you touched on a lot of stuff. As I wrap up here, I want to just kind of summarize because I think there's a lot in this episode, from the identity statement, from the quilts, which I really love. Like, I really feel like that's important, because sometimes people often ask, like, if you spent like a decade of your life doing something else that maybe doesn't seem like it aligns with what you do now. People are like, oh, do you regret that time, or you wish you would have done something differently? And a lot of times, when I hear people's stories, I'm like, well, if they would have done something differently, they may not be here, right? Maybe, but may not. And so hearing it as like a quilt and all of these things like really come together, I think that that's so important. Um, Understanding breath work for sure, and understanding, what I'm also hearing is understanding how to learn yourself with self-discovery. I'm learning, like, learning to take a step back and really review what's going on, especially when your body is telling you things, because we often ignore our bodies and the signs, and our bodies talk to us often, very, very
Yes.
often. So all of those things, I think that the only other thing I would add to what you said about journaling, as a person who struggles, I only struggle to journal daily. I can journal when it's a lot on my heart, but like, asking yourself why. So my therapist always says, like, if there's something going on, ask yourself why. Ask yourself why 5 times. So once you give an answer, what's the why behind that? Like, why do you feel that way? Why is that a problem? Why is this good? Why is that bad? Because you end up getting to the root of whatever you're searching for, when you start to ask why, whether it's for you or someone else.
I
So,
love that. I use that when I help, you know, at one point I was doing a lot of coaching with helping people find their divine purpose. And whether it was like the larger parts of their business or what they're doing in their career. And I called it 7 layers of why. And asking, like, you know, if you want to start this business, or, you know, you want to start doing this thing or whatever it is, like, you know, what is it that you like to do? I do this. Why? Like, when you asking more questions is that's something I've been learning, because to open doors to many things is it's in the art of questioning.
yeah.
I think there's a book around that too. I can't think, but we're talking about quite a few books there. But I do. When you said that, I didn't think about it in that way of journaling to use, even though I use it for, like, you know, finding your purpose or making sure what you're about to get ready to do is in alignment,
Mhm.
by asking those 7 layers of why. Because if you dig in enough, and it strikes whether you feel really connected, emotional, or even cry. And I remember when I was like, in different businesses, they always said, know your why, you know, and I'm like, I don't know my why. It don't make me cry. Like, you know, like, what? And then, you know, it didn't, when I started to ask the questions why even more, I'll start with why. Yes. Simon Sinek. I love him. I love him. I love him. So, that it is important to ask why in so many avenues of where we are in life, because that is where it starts that is self-discovery right there. I didn't think about it until we were having this conversation. When you ask, like, how does someone start their self-discovery, ask yourself why. In every aspect and everywhere you show up and where you work, why, and making sure that it feels fully connected and divine to what feels right for you, you know, that you're going to consistently show up or get an effort, you know, put the effort in. Because the journey of life is not easy. You know, there's so much disruption. I look at myself in disruption in a good way, but there's distraction
Mhm.
that disrupts your mission too. That's intentional. So it's so important to dig into that. Why, and then don't be so hard on yourself, because I'm speaking for, I feel like I'm speaking to the old me, and somebody's out there listening. That's that. But you know that, the procrastinate, fear of perfectionism, not procrastination, perfectionism,
Yeah.
wanting to make sure that, you know, you get it right. Like, I remember that why and felt like I had to figure it out. And I'm not crying because my mentor said, And I just wanted to know my path starts in the way it does and it unravels. And like I said, I really now look at it as a quilt, and, it sews and put patches and pieces together in its own time the way it's supposed to. Like, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. We're never behind, because even in the path when we're not, there's always a lesson. And like I said, that's why affirming and affirmations is really important, because I'm always where I need to be. The old perfectionist type A, I always feel like I gotta be somewhere before, but I bring it back and break that whole cycle of that. And I'm perfectly where I'm supposed to be right now in this moment.
Oh, that's a perfect note to end on. I love that. I love that. So tell us where we can find you. You can go ahead.
Okay. So I am Lauren LC Wells on LinkedIn, and then Thrive with LC is on IG. I'm on TikTok too. And then HerVival _ HerVival is my company on Instagram, and regular HerVival on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Awesome.
And to learn everything about what we're doing at HerVival, from, working with us, or even our membership, you can go to hervival.co. And for our membership, we do have a community of women who are looking to be alongside, who are on your self-discovery journey, learn how to prioritize your well-being, your self-care. You can learn about our membership at hervival.co/membership. And as a thank you to your listeners here, Mariah, we do have a code for your listeners. It's Glow Up Now.
Awesome. Okay, I'm excited about that. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for coming on today. I truly enjoyed this conversation. It's a reminder of all the things that I need to do, and the reset and the slow down. So I truly, truly appreciate you having time, or making time for us today.
Thank you. I appreciate being here and having me.
Thank you. Well, thanks again to all my listeners. I appreciate you all. If you guys have any questions, comment, or feedback, would love to hear from you. Feel free to make a comment on the episode and we'll get back to you. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, share with a friend, comment below. The Growing the Middle podcast is produced and edited by Mid-Century Marketing Company. We aim to create engaging and relatable content that helps you chart your own path to growing the middle. I want to thank our wonderful guests, and especially you, the listener. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to let us know. Until next time.